Today we are going to be rendering tallow for soap making and cooking. Hey everyone, it's Stephanie from the Farmhouse Mom, and today I'm going to show you my preferred way to render tallow. So I have been making soap for the fall and I am all out of tallow. I've got some that I've pulled out of the freezer and I'm going to show you what I think is the best way to render tallow. So here is the tallow. This is how I usually get it from the butcher. So it can come in big chunks and that is much harder to render down. Just takes longer for the fat to melt. I like to have them put it through the meat grinder, and so you can get some smaller pieces. It's much easier to process. What you're gonna need to render your tallow, obviously your tallow, that's your ingredient, and a crock pot. The older the crock pot, the better. The crock pot that you're using could make a big difference. If you've tried to render tallow or slow cook things in a crock pot before and it's burnt, it's probably because your crock pot is newer and the low is gonna be at a higher temperature than the old ones. And so I picked up this beauty for, I think I might have got it for $3, maybe $5, but if you find an old 70s crock pot, then grab it and it is going to be your best friend when it comes to slow cooking. So we're gonna be able to put the tallow in here, it's gonna melt it, and we could even walk away and it's not gonna burn. And then also some cheesecloth and a strainer. I prefer to ladle it just directly into my jars. The less dishes for me is the better. And so all we're gonna do is make sure that this is turned on low. It doesn't take that long to melt down. I like to do it when it is a little bit of a nicer day, and we are having a nice day here in Missouri and we're right by an open window. And we may be able to get all of this in. There's two different ways you can render animal fat, whether it's lard or it's tallow, and that is dry rendering without water or wet rendering with water. I've done both, and with the wet rendering, it was not shelf stable for me. It developed mold both in my pantry and also in the refrigerator. It's pretty much impossible to get all of the water out of the fat, and that just invites bacteria. Some of the reasons that people will wet render animal fat is that it will draw out more of the impurities. And so with your crock pot, you'll do some water, maybe a cup or two of water and a couple tablespoons of salt, and then you'll add your animal fat. Then you'll put the melted fat and water in the refrigerator where the fat can solidify, and then you can get the water off. The majority of the water will come off, but then you'll have to scrape off kind of what's left. And you can't really ever get all of the water out of it. Also, the more you heat it, you are processing it. So every time you heat it, let it cool, heat it, let it cool. Sometimes people will do that 5-6 times. It strips away all those A, D, E, and K fat soluble vitamins that you're trying to retain for cooking or for your soaps or cosmetics or whatever that you're doing. With the dry rendering, it comes out nice and white and there's no smell. If there is smell, it's a very faint, kind of like a sweet smell. So for cooking, I think dry rendering is superior because we're gonna be able to melt our fat, put it in a jar, and just put it in our pantry. And then for soaping or making cosmetics, I think dry rendering is more beneficial because you're just gonna retain more of the fats that you want. So the argument against dry rendering and for wet rendering is that you don't get all the impurities removed, and it might cause your cosmetics or your soaps to go rancid or spoil a little because there's maybe still a little bit of meat in there. I have soaps that are over 2 years old, and one of them is the first soap I ever made, which was 100% lard. Still smells great, it didn't go rancid. So for me, dry rendering is best because you have less dishes, you aren't doing it over and over. And for this, you do it once, you wipe out your crock pot, and then you just have your dishes that you put your tallow in. All right, so I am going to put a lid on this to help it melt down a little bit more, and then we will come back when it is ready to go. All right, so this has been melting for probably about an hour or so. I'm just gonna kind of break this up Okay, this is melted down nicely, and I think we are ready to start straining some tallow. So I'm going to do a couple for cooking, and that's what I'll put in here. And the rest I'm just gonna use for soap making, and so just so I don't have to dirty another dish, I'm just gonna put it in this empty coconut oil plastic container. And I usually will double my cheesecloth, and I'll show you after how I clean my cheesecloth without putting it in the washer, because you don't want all that greasy tallow clogging up your washing machine. So, and when you have the butcher grind it up, this tallow strains pretty easy because all of the meat, the little brown bits, will just sink to the bottom, and so just on the top I'm just getting pure tallow here. And I usually try not to stir it up too much. I usually just try to skim the top off. And then if I feel like it's going really slow, I'll just take a little spoon and just kind of lift up anything that might be blocking it. All right, and I was gonna do 2 of these jars for cooking, but I have a lot of soap making to do. My brambleberry order is coming in this Friday, so I think I'm just going to save this for cooking. You kind of push it out a little bit. You don't want to squeeze really hard because you don't want any of the impurities to kind of go through the cheesecloth, but you can just gently kind of press it a little bit. All right, so we're done with that. And then we'll just set this aside, and then we'll finish the rest. Get it inside our coconut oil container, and then we will have, I would say, at least 3 or 4 batches of soap in there.
Mom, is this fun to you?
It is fun to me. It's fun to make things. It's fun to learn how to do new stuff, huh?
I'm going to put them down. Or no?
No, I'm gonna hold it up so it'll make it faster for it to drain.
It's still dripping. Mom, we're going to say how much is a second? Because I wonder how much is a second.
1.
1.
That's a second.
I think 1. Mom, a couple
There's
is...
67. There's 60 seconds in a minute, and there's 60 minutes in an hour.
So 60 minutes? My bird will be here?
I think it's going to be 2 hours, so it'll be 120 minutes.
Oh.
Is that a long time?
Yeah, it's very long.
Yeah.
I don't have any.
Oh no! We just dropped some on the counter, huh?
Now I know why you say no, you're not holding it up.
Yeah. Well, we'll let that
What?
we'll let that harden for a little bit, and then we'll just scoop it back up.
So you're going to scoop this
Sometimes
back
if
up?
it gets slow, you can just kind of hold it, and then look how fast it's coming out now. It's coming out super fast.
Oh, that's better. Mom, can I help you with anything?
You can keep me company.
Mom, this is a little bit boring to me.
Is it?
Yeah. Keeping you company is a little bit boring.
Is it?
Yeah.
Well, all right, so we're at the point where we do need to stir a little bit, and everything that's gonna go in there is gonna be little brown bits, which is fine. We'll just be gentle when we kind of push it through. Okay, so we have a bunch that just dropped out, so we'll just pick that up and remelt it. Okay, so now we've kind of got, you can see kind of the meat bits that are going in there, and we will put it all in.
Oh, no, not.
Look at all that, yeah. And just let it drain gently. And then I just lift up the edges, and that just kind of helps it drain just a little bit. So I'm just gonna gently kind of massage this a little bit. All right, we are pretty much done. I'm just gonna give this one little gentle squeeze, and then we will be giving this to the chickens. They'll appreciate that. I don't want to press too many impurities in there. It's not worth it to get like an extra tablespoon of oil. All right, let's go give this to the chickens, and this is what I'm left with. Okay, so we are done straining our tallow, and now we're left with this like disgusting cheesecloth. And let me show you how I clean it so it doesn't go down my drain and it doesn't go in my washing machine. So what I do is I take my cheesecloth and I just put it inside a jar with hot water and a pump of soap. and then I will just shake it up, clean it. I'll do that 3 or 4 times, and then you have a nice clean cheesecloth that you can hang out. All right, so I'll shake this up to clean it, and I'll do that 3 or 4 times, and I always dump outside. I always dump it outside so it doesn't get down my drain. So you wanna go dump it outside? Let's dump it outside and do it again. All right, I've done it 3 times, and now what I'll do is just let it soak in hot, scalding hot water for just like 10 or 15 minutes, and then I'll just hang it out on the line. Okay, so we have our finished product here. We have almost, I'd say 2/3 of the way full of our tallow for our soap making, and
Mom, we're going to dump all that inside there?
we're not.
Why?
And then we've got our tallow that we're gonna use for cooking, and it has already just in, 20 or 30 minutes already started to get nice and white. So we'll just go ahead and put a lid on so no bugs get in there. We'll set that next to the stove, and then we'll be ready. I'm gonna put that lid on tight.
There.
Right, and then we will be ready to see you for our next video where we are gonna make some soap this weekend.
And make a video.
And make a video, yes. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and we will see you in a few days.